So you're building or already built your Framer site, but you also know that it's probably not following all best practices and has a bunch of small errors. That's why in this video I'm revealing to you my 29-point Framer site checklist that helps you make sure that your site is top-notch and doesn't have some issues that you don't even know of. My name is Nandi, this is Framer.University, and let's get started. So as you can see, here's my Framer site checklist for 2025. It is basically just a website, so you're gonna find the link for it down in the description. And here you can just click one of these items to mark them as completed. And you can see that there are 4 categories: structure and layout, typography, animations and interactions, and then some pro tips at the end. We're gonna go through each of them one by one in this video. I'll try to give you some more context on what each one means or how you can actually make sure that they are implemented on the page. I'll try to go through these really quickly. And yeah, so let's take a look at the first item, which is only using 3 breakpoints. So when we start projecting Framer, we get a desktop breakpoint with 1200 pixels in width. And then many people start complicating it a little bit too much. They're thinking, oh, what breakpoints should I use? Okay, I can add these tablet and phone breakpoints here, so I can specify different layouts for smaller devices, but what sizes should I use? Should I add the bigger breakpoint, or what should I do? But this is just overthinking, guys. You just stick to these 3 sizes that Framer gives you, and that's it. You don't need more, you don't need less. You have 3, 1200, 8, 10, and then 390 for the phone, and that's it. The only case where you might want to create a larger desktop breakpoint is specifically, for my case, is when I want to have a little bit more breathing room, but only just to see my design a little bit better. So on the Framer.University website, you can see that I have 4 breakpoints: desktop LG, desktop, and then tablet and phone. But what you have to realize here is that the desktop LG and the desktop is the same. Of course, the size is different, but the layout within is the same. The only reason why I have this here is because I can see my design in a little bit larger width compared to this one. So you can see here, we don't have too much space, but here I can actually, that's not a great example because that is filling up the width. But here you can see that this space here is a little bit less compared to what we see on the desktop LG. So again, this is just for designing on a larger canvas. But I usually don't set anything else differently on an LG or desktop LG breakpoint. In some cases, if you want to do something like that, of course, you can create a larger breakpoint and set different layouts or, override some of the properties there. But what I think is that most users are not using such large devices. So I think that's not a coincidence that Framer actually use 1200 as the base. I think that's a perfect size to design for. One extra thing I want to show you is how do you add a larger breakpoint, because it's not by doing this. This is not going to be great because now this is your primary breakpoint, and this should be the primary breakpoint. So the largest breakpoint should be the primary, but now this is the primary. So the way you add the larger is by overriding this first primary. You can also see it here in the layers. It's primary. You double click, override it to whatever value you need, move it here, and then you just add a custom here, desktop MD and 1200, let's say. And of course it's going to be placed here, but I can just move it here. And now correctly, my largest breakpoint is the primary, and then this one right here is just another breakpoint, just like the tablet or the phone. Okay, so let's take a look at the second item. Breakpoint and containers within are turned into stacks. Again, really important. So by default, when you create a new project in Framer, you're gonna find a desktop breakpoint on the canvas, and this by default is not a stack. If you place elements within, so if you drew a frame, you can see that I can move it around freely. it's absolutely positioned on the right properties panel. And this is a problem because some people, some beginners, start assembling the website with these absolutely positioned elements. And then what they notice afterwards is that it's not really going to be responsive. As they resize the website, everything will fall apart, and it will also be really hard to fix it later on. So that's why I always say that the first thing should be turning your desktop breakpoint into a stack, so elements within can be relatively positioned. You can see relative is not even available for these frames at this stage because desktop is not a stack. So let's turn this desktop breakpoint into a stack by going to the right panel and clicking the plus button next to layout. Now you can see that these already changed their positions a little bit within, because now they are both set to relative position. This basically means that now we cannot move them around freely anywhere we just want to place them, because they're going to snap into their relative position. We can reorder them, of course, but overall their position will be defined by their parent, which is the desktop in this case. And you have these layout settings now because the desktop is a stack. So you can set the alignment, the distribute, the gap, the padding, and all sorts of different properties. And that's how you change the position of the relatively positioned layers or frames within. And you have to do the same for elements that are within. So these frames here should also be stacks. So on the right panel, we have to turn both of these to stacks. And that's how you just nest multiple stacks within each other to create these responsive layouts. Let's take a look at the third item, 90% relative position elements and 10% absolute position elements. So yes, this is exactly what I was also talking about just before. So again, most elements will be relatively positioned on our pages. Absolute position is only used if it's really necessary. So for example, if I have a bunch of content within this stack, but I want to have a little icon or button in the top right here. Of course, I cannot really just make a frame here and move it here because it will snap into its relative position because it's following the stack settings of its parent, which is right here. You can see direction, distribute, alignment, stuff like that. So in this case, we can make this frame, this single frame, absolute position. So now it's no longer following those rules, and we can position it anywhere. So we can put it to the top right. And we can also use these pins to pin it to the top with maybe 10, and then to the right with 10 as well. And we can deactivate the left pin. Now these pins will basically mean that it will always keep 10 pixels from the top of its parent and 10 pixels from the right of its parent. So for example, if I set this stack now to width fill, it will always fill up the available space within the viewport. And this here will always stick to the top right because we set top pin to 10 and right pin to 10 as well. If these are not activated, you're going to see that it will start getting a little bit further away from the right side as I resize, or even touching the edge of its parent. So that's why it's really useful to use these pins when we're working with absolutely positioned elements. So yeah, the next one here is breakpoints, and most sections use auto fit height, so they grow when new content is added. Yes, so for example, we have these frames within. Let's say these are sections here. These look really weird, but let's just say these are sections. Now, if I start duplicating these sections to make our site a little bit larger, you're going to see that the desktop breakpoint itself is not growing because it has a fixed height of 1080 pixels. Now, I could just change the height to match the content within, but I don't want to do that each and every time I add new content. So what I can do is I can just set this desktop to height fit content. So now it will be auto-sized depending on the content within. If I delete a section, it will adjust. If I add new sections, it will adjust. And I can do the same for these sections within. So I might place elements within this section here. I will duplicate them a bunch of times. And now you're going to see that they're not even having enough space within because this stack, let's say section, is height fixed. So I can set it to fit. So now it fits the elements within. So yeah, again, really important. Most sections should use auto or fit content height. Okay, so the next item is viewport height based min height is added to the hero section. Recommended 90 to 100 VH. What is this viewport height based min height? What the hell are we talking about? Now, I just jumped into a different project. I'm going to also leave a remix for this in the description. I actually made it for a different video. But what I want to show you here is that, again, what I was talking about here is the hero section, that we should set a min height that is based on VH. Why? Now, this hero section is simply set to fit height, so it's following the content within. If I add new text layers, it will start growing. However, it looks a little bit weird because I land on this page and the hero section only takes up, I don't know, around 500 or 400 pixels on the top of the website. And then we start seeing the rest of the sections here, which is not really cool. So what you could do is you could make it fixed and a little bit larger. But as I said, we don't really like using fixed sizes, or maybe I haven't said it yet. Maybe that's going to be a future item. But if I do that, again, the problem with that will be that fixed is not really dynamic. If I change the viewport, it might be enough, but on large devices, it might be not enough. So what we can do is we can set the height to fit as suggested in the previous item. But for the hero, we can also set a min height. So we can click here, add min height, and then we can set a viewport based min height. So what we say with this is that fit the content within, but do not be smaller than this specified size. And we can either set 100 VH or 90 VH here, whatever we like, maybe 95. And now you're gonna see that this will take up 95% of the given viewport, and that's gonna be the minimum height. If I resize, it nicely adopts. And then the great part about this whole thing is that once it reaches the size of the content within, it will no longer, start getting smaller or no longer get smaller. I used to set the viewport height here for the height itself, but the problem with that is that if you have a really small device, then you can see how the text starts cutting off and I cannot even scroll to reveal that. But if I set height fit, now it fits the content within, and I set the viewport as a min height, this whole thing gets resolved, because now by default we set the height, but we don't get smaller than the viewport height, and that's why it will nicely be also visible even if we have a really small viewport height. Now I just want to a little bit further clarify what is viewport height so you understand. Viewport height is basically the height of the device that we're using to visit the website. So for example, we might visit our website on a large screen like a TV. That viewport height will be really large, but we might visit on a small phone. Viewport like 90 VH or 95 VH basically means that 95% of that given viewport height. That's why you can see that this section here is adapting to the different height changes that I make here. Really important, set your hero to fit height and then add a min height, which is based on viewport height. Let's reveal the next point, which is most frames use fill width so they adapt to screen width changes. So we can go back here and see why is it important. So you can see that we have these frames within and only the top one is set to fill width. You can see that it's nicely adapting to the different changes of the viewport width. So as I resize this viewport here, you can see how it adapts, but this frame here, it's just fixed. The width is fully fixed. It's not going to change like ever. And this is not great because of course we're going to add a tablet and phone breakpoint because this website will be visited on phones and tablets as well. And how is this section going to look on phone? Like you can see how it's overflowing. It's not really great. We're not even going to see most of the content that is maybe put right here or placed right there. So that's why it's really important that most frames again, it should be like a default thing that you do, that you just draw a stack and then you set the width to fill and the height to fit. That should be the default. And then in some cases you might use fixed and stuff like that, but this should be the absolute default for each of your frames that you draw. Next item is add your navigation and footer into a layout template. Really important. Layout template is a new feature in Framer. So let's see what it is and how we can use it. So as you can see, by default, we have our navigation on the top of the page, and then we have a main container within. We're going to also talk about this structure a little bit later, but then we have the footer at the very end of the website. This is great, but this has a little problem. If I want to add this navigation to different pages, so let's just create a new page. You can see by default, it doesn't have it. I have to copy it from here and paste it in, and now it's there. But if I change the position of the navigation, for some reason I want to move it a little bit more to the bottom, I have to do this change on this page as well and all other pages on my website, which can be a really, really bad time for us. Because if we have 50 pages, you can imagine how much work this is going to be. So this is why Framer invented layout templates, which can be used for adding certain elements inside of them to use them as fixed elements on pages where those layout templates are applied. So the way you do this, again, what was the tip? Let's just take a peek again. Add your navigation and footer into layout templates. So how do you do that? You right click your navigation and create layout template. We can call this main and hit create. Now this is the layout template editor view. You can see that now this navigation is placed on the top. Of course, our navigation probably has a phone variant, so we can add these breakpoints here and then select the phone here on the phone breakpoint. Now this navigation will be on all pages where this layout template is applied. So I can come here, you can see that already this home page has the layout template applied on the right. So if I select the desktop breakpoint and go to the right, you can see that the layout template is applied. If I remove, the navigation disappears. And you can also see that it's no longer editable from here, from the page level. I can no longer see the navigation here on top because it's within the layout template. So I have to double click that to go within the layout template. And this is where I can edit it. But the reason why it's really great is because then I can go to the page and then you can see that it's already applied here. So I can also just simply remove the navigation from the page level. So now this page here has the layout template, and that's why we see this navigation here. And if I decide I want to make a change, I just have to go within the layout template, move it to the bottom, and you can see it's updated here, but its update is on the home page as well. And that's why it's really powerful. So yeah, basically that's it. I'm going to go back, pin it to the top, and then I'm going to also grab the footer, Command and C, and just paste it within the layout template. So now we're going to see that on top, we're going to have the navigation. Then in the middle, we're going to have a placeholder. This is where all content will go that we nest within the layout template. So you can see desktop, layout template applied on the right, and everything that is nested within desktop here on the left layers panel is put within or placed within the placeholder that we see right here. And of course, at the end of the website, after all the content that we defined on the page level, we just put a nice footer. And that's basically it. We can also delete the footer from here. And now you're going to see that it's right here. And it's also added on this other page. And basically, if we have 50 or 100 pages, it will be added on all of those pages one by one. And we didn't have to do that manually one by one, which is really, really good. Let's take a look at our next item, which is breakpoint main section content structure is used. Now, this is the structure of the website, which is going to be super crucial for us. So let's go back to this project here and let's sketch that little structure up really quickly. So I'm going to delete everything that I created so far and do it really quickly. So desktop is set to vertical direction, distribute start, and gap is going to be 0. Padding is also going to be 0. Then I'm going to draw a frame within, this is going to be called main. You see? Main, desktop main. So we have desktop and then we have main. This main is going to be the main container, which is also a stack with a vertical direction, gap 0, and distribute center. So everything I place within will start at the top. Now, of course, what we already talked about, the main will be with fill, as most frames, and height will be fit, as well as the desktop breakpoint will be fit. Now we have this is pretty good. Frame within the main is going to be called section, as you can see. Desktop main section, desktop main section. And of course the section should also be turned into a stack, so layout is clicked, width fill and height will be fit content. We cannot set it yet because there's no content within. And now let's take a look at the frame that we have to nest within the section, which is the content. So within the section, we have a content frame. I'm going to call this content. So now we have the full structure, desktop, main, section, content. The content will be again with fill, just like everything else. And then I'm going to also make it a stack. So now we have everything. Then what we can also do is we can add a max width to the content, maybe 1000 pixels, so it doesn't grow bigger than that size. You can do this, I utilize it on this page as well. So you can see that here on the left we have this unused space, and here on the right as well. And this is because this content here in the center has a max width. Why I did that? Well, because I want to contain it to a nice max width. I don't want to fill the entire page with the text, because then I have to like move my head so much to read everything. So that's why we add max width to the content frame. And at this point, all we have to do is start duplicating these sections. And then of course, all of these sections will be fit content. Now let's take a look at the next item, which is top and bottom padding is set on section frames, left and right padding is set on content frames. So this is really relevant for us right now, because you can see that now these sections are touching each other, the content frames that are within the section. So we add the top and bottom padding on the section level, so all the sections are selected, and I usually set top 100 and bottom 100. So now you can see that the content frames within these sections are now a little bit further away from each other. Now what we also do is we set left and right padding on the content frames. So content frames are selected and the left and right pin is, sorry, not pin, padding. So left and right padding is set to 20. Why do I do that? Well, because if we have some text here and I set that to width fill, and let's just say that I don't have that left and right padding, then you're going to see that as I start changing the width, this text is touching the left side of my website, which is not really looking great. I want to have some breathing room on the left and on the right. So that's why the 20 left and the right padding is applied, so that when this is getting smaller, it is nicely keeping 20 pixels from the left and from the right. The next point is max width is set on content frames. So again, this is something I already did. I set the max width to 100 on these content frames, so they are not growing bigger. The reason why I set these max widths on the content frames and not on sections is because then I can still decide to have maybe a image here. So let's just set this direction to vertical, so these are right below each other. So let's say this is an image within the section, and I want to have this image fill up the available space and touch the edges. So that's why I can do it simply here, just setting the width here to fill, and then it's nicely filling up the available space within the viewport, and it's not contained to that max width. If I were to set the max width on the section, let's try that, max width 1000 pixels, all content within the section would be contained to 1000 pixels. So now, as you can see, even this little image, which is now just a white frame, is not filling up the available space of the website because we are containing it to 1000 pixel. Now, this is why it's a little bit more flexible to set the max width on the content level. And then if you decide that you want to have maybe an image or something else on max width or fill up the available space within the screen, you can do that. That's how I achieve, for example, these layouts on the Framer.University landing page, where certain content, as you can see, is touching the left and right edge, but some of them are nicely contained in these max width containers. So this is, for example, a content frame here. This is also a different content frame because it has a different max width. As you can see, it's a little wider, but you can see these are completely running to the edges of the website because they are placed outside of this content container, which is set to a max width. So by changing the content frames and other content frames that doesn't have the max width, you can create these layouts. Now, our last item within the structure and layout group is layout is tested by previewing and resizing. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, you have to always test your website for different screens. So you have to go into the preview in Framer by just clicking this play button or pressing Command P, and then start resizing it like crazy, and pay attention to all the small details. And if something doesn't look great on a specific size, make sure to do something about it to get it fixed. So we're moving on to typography. Let's see the first item here. Text wider than 390 pixels uses fill width. If it isn't, it will not break into new lines on smaller devices. If we have a text layer that is wider than 390 pixels, then we have to use fill width on that. Let's see why. Let's say I have a little text here that says Nandi. As you can see here, it says Nandi. Perfect. It's set to width fill now, but let's just set it to fit content for now. And you're going to see that it is fine, because I cannot possibly have a viewport or like a device that is smaller than the actual text. So it's never going to clip. It's never going to cause any issues. The text will always be nicely visible. But if I were to write something else here, so maybe I write something a little longer here, and so it might start clipping. Now you're going to see that if I keep this text on a width fit, which many beginners do this, it will start clipping. You can see I'm looking at this on a small phone screen and I cannot even read the text. That's why if your text is larger than 390, you can see the size of it here. Width 530, much bigger. We have to set it then to fill, because then the issue will be solved. And you can see that now it's jumped to the left. So you might be, okay, Nandi, but then I cannot position the way I want to position it. You can, you just have to set the alignment here to the center if you want to center it or something like that. And now you're going to see that now it will try to fill the width all the time. So if we don't have enough space, then we don't have enough space, but we can then grow to like vertically. So this text can break into new lines to show itself fully. So we have solved our little issue. So that's why it's really important to set your text layers to width fill if they are larger than 390 pixels. The next item within typography is if text is set to width fill, all of its parent frames are set to auto fit height. Why is this important? You can see that now I have this content here that is one parent frame of this text layer, and it is not set to fit. It's fixed. Here it says that it should be fit. So what is the problem that it causes? Here you cannot really see it. And this is something that, might not always happen, but I'm just writing these down to make sure that we are avoiding these issues. So we don't even, see them because we avoided them completely. The problem with that, with setting fixed height for a parent frame that has a text layer within set to width fill, is because then if this parent is a little bit too small like this, it might look great here on the screen, but as the text starts breaking into new lines, you can see that it might potentially start clipping itself. Here it's not that visible because the text is not long enough, but I might be able to make it a little bit longer and then make this a little bit larger as well. And now you're going to see that as I start making this smaller, the text will start clipping like crazy. So we cannot see the text. And that's why it's really important that if we set a text layer to width fill, it will eventually start breaking into new lines. So the height of the text layer will start adjusting. So we cannot have a parent frame that is fixed. It has to have an auto-sizing behavior that dynamically changes based on content within. So content has to be set to fit content height. You might also say, Nandi, but then I cannot have the top and bottom space there. No, you can have that too. You just have to add padding. Top maybe 50, bottom 50. There you go. It looks nice now. So now if the text within starts increasing in height, the content frame also starts increasing in height. Exactly what we are looking for. And you might be good if you just set the first parent of the text layer to fit content height, but you might also want to set the section and other parent frames just in case the text just breaks into multiple lines and you don't have enough space. But there might be some situations where you can have different sizing for parents that are not directly the parent of these text layers. Okay, so let's see the next one. Using auto-responsive text by creating text styles and breakpoints on them. So this just basically means that you have to use text styles. Ideally, you set them up when you start a project because it will make it so much easier to make your text responsive. Because of course you might say, Nandi, the text is already responsive. As you can see, I set the width to fill, so it's nicely filling up the available space and breaks to multiple lines. Everything is okay. But you don't really think about the fact that you might have a large text layer here, maybe like the heading on your hero section or something like that. It might also be semi-bold or something like this, which looks great on desktop. But as soon as you start increasing the size, yes, it might break into new lines, but on phone, I might not want to have such large text. So that's why you have to create these text styles. How do you do that? Well, you can just either go to the assets panel on the left and create these text styles here. You can see I already have them set up. But I'm going to also show you how you create one. So let's just create one for this example. I can also add the text style here by selecting the text and going to the right. And I can also add the new style here. So let's create a new style. It's going to be heading 1 and I'm going to edit it. So you can see that here I can specify the text style, so the font, the weight, and the letter spacing and size and everything. But then what I can do is I can add the breakpoints here. So if I click this button, I generated L, M, and S breakpoints. L is desktop, M is tablet, and S is phone. And you can see that as I toggle between these, the size is changing. So now this basically means that on desktop, it's going to have 53 size. On tablet, 42. And on phone, it's going to be much smaller, 34. And everything, so all of this will adopt automatically. So as you can see, as I start making this website a little bit smaller, the text slowly starts shrinking. Pretty nice. Now, this is also great because we can apply this same text style to multiple elements, so we can just reuse it. So what you can do is you can set up, 5 text styles on the left panel, and then you can just reuse them multiple times on different text layers. And then if you want to, change all the H2s on your website, you can just come here and change the size. And then every single H2 or every single text that has this H2 style will nicely adopt. Pretty great. Just like, layout templates where we didn't have to manually update all pages, or with components that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Next, typography. Headings use H1 to H6 tags. So yeah, text layers are not just text. They also have a little accessibility tag on the right panel, or at least I hope they have. Now let's just see, because I actually don't know. If I just make a text layer here, what is the default tag? Yes, it has a tag by default, which is P, which means paragraph. So if you have just a random text layer on your page, it should be paragraph. H1 to H6, those are the headings on your website. So just again, as an example, Framer.University. This right here is H1. That is the heading 1. That's the most important thing on my website. Then we have, these are H2. So that was the main heading, defines the title of the page. And then H2, this is a section. And then we have an H2 here as well. This is another section. And then if you might have sections within sections, so if I were to have more titles within this section, those could be H3, H4, H5, H6, and so on. And you have to make sure that these are set up correctly. One extra thing that I want to mention here is that you cannot really have multiple H1 on one page. So if you have a heading 1, that's your heading 1, that's your main heading, that's like the title of the page, and you cannot have multiple of that because yeah, you just cannot. You can have multiple H2s and H3s, but no H1. It's really important for great SEO to make sure that search engines are getting the right information and you're not confusing them with multiple site titles. It's not really a site title, but it's like defines the the main message or the main information about the specific page. And the next one right here is paragraphs use p tag. I maybe not even need to have it here because as we explored it previously, if you create a text layer, it uses p by default. But yeah, you might just want to check if regular text on your page, like let's just say maybe like a text like this, just make sure that it's not like a heading or something, because this is just a description, just a simple paragraph. Moving on to our third section or group, or I don't know, animations and interactions. First one, effects are not added to all layers, use them sparsely. Really important, guys. I see so many Framer sites, everything is moving, everything is animated. Because I can understand that, because you're like, oh yeah, let's go. I have a freeform canvas, I can build sites, I'm not writing code. Let's animate everything, because I can just click here, text effects, boom, text is animated. Let's animate this text as well. Effects, text, boom, it's now animated. Both of them, pretty good. I don't know how they switched positions, but I don't know what is happening here. But yeah, also make sure that it has a scroll transform. So as I scroll down, it's also, I don't know, scaling up, because why not? I can do that. Let's do that. Guys, I know it feels really great to be able to do these really crazy designs, these websites without writing any code on a freeform canvas. It's like, playing a game, but you have to think about that these effects can really weigh down the computers. It can really be a performance issue if you have these effects on all layers. Just take a look at the Framer.University website. If you scroll on this landing page, you don't see many animations. The only animation I have is on these sections. When they come in, they have a little like animate in effect. You maybe cannot even see it, it's really subtle. You don't see everything like moving. Here we have like scroll animation on these cards, but everything is really subtle because you don't want to overdo these things. Here you have little details on the footer. You can have these, but do not make everything move and like crazy, because again, performance issues. And second of all, to be honest, it might look a little weird that like everything is moving. Your website should really like tell information about yourself, it's a portfolio or your product, service, whatever. If everything is moving and like animated, then you might not even get the information, or the visitor might not even get the information, because they are just distracted by all those animations that you have on the page. So yeah, animations are great, but make sure that you don't add them to all of your elements. Now, the next one is user select none is added to text within interactive elements. I see this on FAQs most of the time, that people are creating these FAQs and they're not adding user select none. So if I'm starting to click these interactive element, I also select the text, which is not the case here because of course I set user select to none. But if you don't do this, you click here and the text is selected. Let me show you how that looks. So I just changed the user select to auto. So now you can see that I'm clicking here and the text is selected. Not really cool, right? So yeah, super easy to fix this. Just go within the component, just find text layer and then set user select to none. If that's not added, just edit here, styles, user select. On the text layer, set it to none. And basically that's it. You just have to think about that this element or any other element that is interactive is probably going to be clicked, right? If it's not hover interaction. Also with a button. And so if it's clicked, it might be double clicked or something. And it's just a little awkward that you have the text selected on it because that wasn't the intended action from the user. They just wanted to interact with the element. So please not let them select the text then. So yeah, basically that's it. Next animation tip or check, item list, whatever. Transition settings are matched on nested components. Also, it's really easy because I can show it to you right here on this FAQ. So you can see that within this FAQ accordion component, I have nested components because I have this component and then I have also this accordion component within for the individual accordions. Now, if we have a specific transition setting on this, it's set right here, 0.45 and 0.2. I have to match it on the wrapping component. As you can see, it's the same right here. If I set it to 1 second here, so it's completely unmatched, unsynced, then the animation will also be not nice. As you can see, these icons are moving in a weird way. So yeah, you can run into these issues when you can see it just looks weird. So yeah, make sure that if you nest components within each other, all of those components have the same transition settings. So I'm gonna just set it back to 0.45 just to make sure I don't forget it and leave the site like this. Okay, so the next item here is transition settings are consistent. Instead of timing and easing settings are reused throughout all interactions and animations. So this is just a small thing that is nice to have. It might not be noticed by all people, but I think it's just a nice thing. If you have like specific timings, for example here on this transition I have 0.45 and 0.2 bounce, you can then reuse this same time and bounce value on different interactions on your website. So maybe when you start a project you can create or just define these values. So maybe you define a slower transition, a little bit faster, maybe you're also have instant, maybe you specify something that is a little bit more bouncier, and then you just apply these consistently to different elements. So you have a set of timing and easing functions, or did I say functions? I don't think so. Settings, yeah, timing and easing settings that you use, on these different elements. Now, of course, I'm going to say that if you are building a specific interaction and you say, okay, I have defined the specific settings that I should be using here, but it feels a little bit off, I will change it to maybe 0.50. And if that looks better, then feel free to use 0.50. So you can always do these, small tweaks. But I think it's just generally a great thing if we have like a set of, settings that we can choose from. It's the same with color styles or text styles or whatever. That's why we set those up. So we have a set of text sizes that we can pick from, a set of color styles that we can pick from, so that we are not going inside of the project and picking all sorts of different text styles or text sizes. So that on the hero section we have, I don't know, 5 or 10 different text sizes, because that can look a little bit not great. Next item, scroll transform effects are triggered with section in view trigger for precise control of timing. Little space got lost somehow, but yeah. Section in view, why are we using section in view instead of on scroll? Let me show you. So you can see that I have this little page here. I have a white section within, and let's say I want to animate the opacity of this content within from 0 opacity to 1 opacity on scroll when I scroll over the section. So how do I do that? I select the content. On the right, I'll apply scroll transform. The from set will be 1 opacity, 0 opacity, 1 scale. So we're starting from invisible and animating to opacity 1, scale 1 to visible. Now, if you set the trigger to on scroll, you might say, oh, yeah, we want to animate it on scroll. Of course, it's going to be on scroll. But then I scroll down and you can see it's already visible, but it's still not fully visible. I'm scrolling here and it's just not visible fully. But I wanted to animate from 0, so I shouldn't be seeing it here this much. And then when I'm here, I should be seeing it completely, opacity 1. Now the problem here is that we're not using section in view as a trigger. On scroll basically means that the animation from the from state to the to state is animated from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. So the length of the animation will be defined by the length of our page, which is not really great because our page height is always changing if we add or remove sections. And that's why when we scroll past here, of course it's not one opacity because the animation has not yet reached the to state because we haven't reached the bottom of the page. What we do instead is we use section in view, because we can just simply select a section that we want to use as a trigger. So when we scroll over that section, along the area of that section, we're going to just play the animation from the from to the to state. So I can just select this section here, the white section, and on the right, I can add a scroll section to it named white. And so when I select the content within now, I can select the section here. So now this animation is triggered with the white section. I can also change the viewport here, so it's either going to start playing when this white section starts entering the viewport from the bottom. So I'm scrolling down, and as it starts entering the viewport from the bottom of the page, the animation will start playing. But I can change this to the center, so it might wait until the section reaches the center of the viewport or the top of the viewport. In this case, I might use center, but let's finally take a look at this. As you can see, this has entered the viewport, but it has not reached the center. So we are waiting for that to reach the center. It has reached the center here, and now it's gonna play until this section not reached the center of the viewport. So now it started when the top of the section entered the center of the viewport and ends when the bottom of the section reaches the center of the viewport. Perfect. This is what we needed. And so yeah, with section in view, you can have precise control over your animations, because by selecting or setting the height of these sections to maybe a little bit larger, you also make the animations with that a little bit slower. So now you can see that the animation is a little bit slower. If I set this to a small size, now you're gonna see that it's gonna be a little bit faster. So if you use section in view again, the length of the animation will be defined by the length of the selected section. Our next item is animations, and interactions are inspired by, oh yeah, this was just something I added just to make sure that no one steals this checklist. This was originally posted to Twitter. But yeah, the point is still valid. You can go to Framer.University/resources to look for these crazy components that I share almost every single day. So if you want to add like animated gradients like this to your website without writing any code, or perhaps this lanyard component, which is absolutely crazy, fully customizable, change the design of it, the string design, everything, and the site is just filled with these. Fully free, everything, use it anywhere, commercial projects, anything goes. So yeah, that was just a little side note here. Let's get to the pro tips section. First item here, all texts are set on all images for improved accessibility and SEO. Now, I think it's again pretty self-explanatory. If you have images on your pages, you have to make sure that they have alt text. So let's say this content frame has an image. I can use a plugin, maybe the Unsplash plugin. Where is Unsplash? Here. I can use it to just select an image, and now it's going to be uploaded to my website, but this is not enough. I cannot stop right here, because now the browsers, the search engines, will not really know what this image is about. So in order to make sure that they know that, I have to select the frame that has the image field, go to the right to image, and set the alt text here. As you can see, we just have to describe the image. So a woman in black, that's it. It might be enough. What I also do is I use an AI prompt to write these alt texts, because I don't want to spend time with like explaining all of my images that I upload to the website, because I upload a few. So you can see my prompt here. I just paste this into AI, and then I just upload my images and it will generate proper image alt text for each. I'll leave this in the description. Let me just upload it to Pastebin. So as you can see, I uploaded to Pastebin. You can go to this link, pastebin.com/y5prwbet, and get this prompt. It makes your life a little easier because you don't have to write these yourself. And again, it's important because, for example, if the image cannot load for some reason, then the alt text will be displayed instead of the image, which is great because we're not going to have like an empty space, but at least we are going to have the alt text of the image, so we know what should have been displayed there. And it's also more accessible because if someone cannot see, they might use screen readers, which basically announces the different parts of our websites to the user. So they're like button, buy now button. And then when it comes to an image, it will just say a woman in black. So someone who cannot see can also know what our images are about. Pretty cool, right? And also I'm going to just say, if you have, for example, or if I have a Framer.University website and I have a bunch of images on that, and I have the Framer keyword in most of my alt text, then browsers or search engines will know that, yeah, this site is probably about Framer because it has a bunch of images that has the alt text in them, that has the word Framer in their alt text. So the search engines think that we might as well just show people who are searching for Framer the Framer.University website. Next pro tip: elements repeating more than 3 times are turned into components. So this is something I already mentioned. Then I'm going to talk about components. Yeah, so if we, for example, have a card that is repeating more than 3 times, or a button, I think the button is the simplest example, you might want to turn that into a component. So you can see that, for example, this card is a component. We have 3 of the same cards here, so of course I'm going to make it into a component. But you might ask, Nandi, why? Well, let me detach these, so make them not components. Now, if they're not components, then I might change my mind and I say this text should be, I don't know, blue. The first card changed text to blue. Now, what is up with the rest of the cards? I have to change those text layers one by one individually on all cards if these are not components. But if these are nicely turned into components because you are listening to my advice, then you can just go within the component and change the text color here. So it's going to change on all component instances. You can see how cool is that? If you want to learn more about components, I'm not going to go deep into them because they are a pretty extensive topic, but I'm going to leave a link down in the description for a components masterclass. It's a pretty extensive video that basically teaches you almost everything that you need to know about components, because they're not only used for repeating elements and for reusability, but also for interactions and for making certain elements responsive for different screen sizes. Our next item is no blur values are over 20 pixel. I cannot read. No blur values over 20 pixel are used to avoid performance issues. So this is also important. You might have a website that is a little bit slow or sluggish or something like that. There are a few different reasons for that, but first thing that you want to check is if you're using, animations everywhere. You remember this here. Effects are not added to all layers. Effects are not added to all layers. Use them sparsely because they might cause performance issues. Same as blur. If you have a drop shadow or just a regular layer blur on a large value, that can be bad. So for example, I have this card. I go to filters, blur, and I blur it so much like this. It's gonna be really heavy on your device. Same as for the drop shadow. So if I go within and I add a little drop shadow here, and let's just change it to maybe blue. So let's say I want to make this like glow. So I set the blur to like a large value. You might say that, my card is glowing, so cool. Yeah, bro, but you have 100 blur on this. which might not be cool because you're gonna have probably a few different cards, all with 100 blur on their drop shadows. Not really good. You might say, okay, but then what do I do? First of all, you're not using these blur values. You just change them to, or just remove them. And then you can add such glow effect with, I don't know, an image. So you can export the glow as an image and just upload it to Framer. So you're gonna have the same like visual, but it's not created with blur. I mean, it was created with the blur, but it was then exported as an image. So the computer doesn't have to do the calculation for calculating this blur, because what you have to know about blur is that it is a calculation that that your device has to do in order to create this effect. And yeah, it's really heavy on the computer. So if you want to use large blur values, make sure to either not use them or export these assets as images and just use them that way. Now we're moving on to the next pro tip, which is navigations use nav tag, footers use footer tag, regular elements use div tag, links a, clickable but non-link elements use button tag. So this tip is about tags, which we already talked about here when we were talking about typography, H1, H6 tags, and P tags. Same for other elements. So if you have a frame on your page like this, or let's just see the frames that we already have. So for example, this section, to make sure that the search engine understands that this is a section here on the page, we have to tell the search engine that this is a section. The way we tell it is by going to the right panel and adding an accessibility tag here, and we just set it to the correct tag. Well, I could go on to explain all of these, but it's literally one AI search or Google search or whatever. But yeah, what is pretty self-explanatory is that for sections, you want to use sections, and for your navigation, you want to use the navigation tag, which is nav. Right here, you can see it, nav. For your main content, so main container here on the left, it's set to main. For a footer, you're going to use the footer tag, as you can see right here. So again, these are just small things, but these are really important to make sure that you have great SEO on your Framer site. So yeah, next one is page titles and descriptions are set, as well as social images. Now, I'm gonna just press down Shift, and I'm gonna just click here. That's easier to explain, because these shortcuts are always different for all different keyboards. So this is your site settings. This is where you can set your site title and description. This is also really important for SEO. This is how search engines will know. Like, this is also, I think, one of the most important things, because this is the title of your page and then the description. So these should be optimized for SEO. For example, for Framer.University, I have like Framer in there and Framer.University, and like in the site description also some keywords like learn Framer. I don't exactly know what I have there, but yeah, also site language, make sure to set these, and again the social image as well. So when you send your website to your friend or your fans, send your website to different people, they're gonna see the social image in the chat or on social media websites and stuff like that. Next one is, if full height navigation is used on mobile, page scroll is blocked with the scroll stopper component. Now this is something that many people are just missing this, like they're just not doing it. So let me show you what is this thing, what am I talking about. So I have this little project here, and you can see that it has a few sections and then a drop down navigation. Of course it looks a little bit weird, because whatever, let's just focus on what is important for us now. You can see that we can still see the background of the like the content of the page a little bit as this is open down here. And this will be really great for us, because I can show you that even though this is open down, I can still scroll on the page. And this is not a great experience, because then they might scroll accidentally or something, and then they close it, and then they're like, how did I get to the bottom of the page? When I clicked the navi, I was here at the top. So how do you make sure that when it's open down, you're blocking the scroll on the page? Well, to do that, you can use the scroll stopper component. It's on Framer.University. We already talked about the website. resources page and search for stop. And it's basically there. You copy the component, you go back to your project, and what you do is you paste it within your navigation. So I'm going to go here to desktop primary. I'm going to press Command V. Now this scroll stop is here, or stop scroll. I can just put it here on the variant level, so not nested within, or like further within. It's of course nested within the variant. And then I'm going to set it to episode positioning, and this is basically an invisible component. It doesn't show anything, it doesn't have color, size or anything, it's just invisible, it just adds the effect. Now, as we added this, we can already see that when we open this down here, we cannot scroll. I'm trying to scroll, but I cannot. But as you can see, if I close the navigation, I still cannot scroll. So we have to set it up a little bit more accurately. So within the navigation on the primary, even though we added the stop scroll here, we have to go to the right panel and set the block scroll to no. So when this variant is displayed on the page, the block scroll is now activated. I have to think about where I want to activate it. Well, I want to activate it on mobile, so I come here to the mobile, open variant, and the stop scroll is set to block scroll. Yes. So now, if I'm on the desktop, the block scroll is on no, so I can scroll. But as soon as I open this down, the new variant is displayed and the stop scroll also changed to block scroll. Yes, and I can no longer scroll. But as soon as I close it, I can continue scrolling. A little, better experience for your visitors, small change, but details matter. The next one is override max width values on your content frames across different breakpoints. I use 1000 pixel on desktop, 700 on tablet, and 400 on phone, and I'm going to also show you why I do this. On this project, you can see that if I go into preview and I start resizing, you can see that the nice 1000 pixel max width is applied on some of these frames. Some content frames have 1000, but some have a little bit smaller like this. This is completely okay. But when I start entering smaller devices, you can see how my content starts pushing together. And in some cases, this is what you need. It's completely fine for you. But what I noticed is that in some cases, it can cause some issues, because as you are designing here, you only see 3 specific sizes. And you might see that, okay, this looks great on all devices. Pretty cool. But then what you don't realize maybe is that as it starts pushing together, we have a bunch of different sizes in between those sizes that we see on the canvas that we cannot really see here. And our design might look bad on a really specific size that we might not be able to catch here. So to fix this, what I did is I started overriding the max width value on these different content frames. So instead of pushing together like this, they are jumping to new sizes as we enter new breakpoints. So you see desktop, tablet, and phone. And there's no pushing whatsoever. Everything I see here is going to be what I see on the live website. So again, the thing I do is on desktop, I'm going to have 1000 max width here. For that, I'm going to have, for this other, I'm going to have max width 600. As you can see, I also have content L, meaning it's a little bit larger content frame, content S for the text, a little bit smaller. And then you can see here, I just set content L to 700. Perfect. And then I set the text content S to 500. And then you're going to see that they nicely jump to that new size instead of getting pushed. Boom. And there is no surprises. What you see is what you get. And then here as well, I set 400 for the text as well. And now this is completely set up. And of course, if someone has a smaller device, then it's going to just start, pushing together below 400. But it can, because still the width is set to fill. So yeah, basically that's it for this video. I really do hope that it was helpful, walking through this checklist with me. I really do hope that some of these points were actually something that you didn't know about, and that you will start implementing on your Framer build. And yeah, feel free to, save the link of this checklist and go back to it whenever you need it. And yeah, also if you have any questions about these points or maybe suggestions for new points that I should add to the checklist, make sure to drop those in the comments. I'll also do my best to answer all of the questions that might came up. So yeah, that is for this video. Also go to Framer.University, check out all the cool components, resources, and lessons. And yeah, like this video, subscribe for more, and I'm going to see you in the next one.